All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good morning, good evening, whatever states, whatever city, whatever country that you are listening to me from. My name is Shofu Babalola Theophilus, and you are welcome to another wonderful episode of the Pest Experience Show. The Pest Experience Show cut across different states, across different cities, across different country. And this is a show where we talk about everything that has to do with pest control. Pest control frequently asked questions across different states, across different cities, across different country. Do you know the Pest Experience Show? Basically, what we do here is to bring experts across different states, across different cities, across different country to share from their own wealth of experience and tell us how it's been done professionally, how we can do it properly, when we can do it, why are we doing it exactly, based on their own experience, what we can do differently. And how we can do it better, much more better, so that we get globally recognized and appreciated in the terms of service. The Pest Experience Show holds every Sunday, 7 to 8 p.m. live on YouTube. And very soon we'll be streaming directly to Facebook at the same time on multiple channels. Well, you're not too late if you're just joining to learn, unlearn, and also relearn. This is a show where you also learn to do all those things that has to do with pest management, right? Um, every Sunday we're talking about different topics and also continuing the education and creating more awareness in global pest management itself. Last week I talked about some major aspects in workforce, pest management, what we can do differently. So you want to go check it out. Check out the previous shows on the Pest Experience on Insight Radio, right? YouTube channel. Check out the videos on Insight Radio. So take your time, watch out most of this contents. Today another days, 8th of March 2026. I'm not doing it alone. Last week I was actually doing the show alone myself, and I actually miss having a guest right on the show. So it's not too late. You're just joining. It's a privilege to also be part of that awareness aspect in pest management. In pest management. Today I'm not doing it alone. I have a special guest who is right here with me on the show. And we're just going to be talking on amazing aspects in pest management. And it's important that we divert into this critical aspect of pest management, which we are going to also talk about. But before I dive into that aspect of what we're talking about tonight, I would like to introduce my special guest tonight. His name is Mr. Ryan, Mr. Warren Ryan, as the founder of Ryan Pest Consulting, is a seasoned pest management professional with over 2 decades of experience helping organizations maintain safe, compliant, and pest-free environment, specializing strictly in commercial integrated pest management, IPM, and it serves clients across facility management, retail, industrial, institutional, food processing, healthcare, and hospitality sectors. Mr. Ryan provides expert consultations for audited facilities certified. Two things: audited facilities certified by NOP, USDA, FDA, ISO, SQF, AIB, BRC, FSSC, and LEED. I mean, most people will be wondering, what exactly are all these certifications? Well, don't worry, you learn all those things. You will learn and relearn all those things. You see how it's been done internationally. I'm also here to learn. I have my jotters here. So if you don't have your jotter here, please find one. Get your pen. Pest Experience Show is a show that you want to first start with first. Have a jotter. Have a jotter specifically for. If you don't have jotters, I have jotters with Pest Insights. I mean, we'll give you enough jotter right here. So, so you can reach out to me. I mean, I have free jotters to give out. So please have a jotter, a book for the Pest Experience Show, because there's always something to learn every Sunday. So we're going to learn about those certifications. So you have certifications from IAB and SQF, NPMA, the National Pest Management Association, Global Association, Quality Pro, and Green Pro, and is also licensed by California Structural Pest Control Board as a branch through operator OPR 14688. Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan, for joining the Pest Experience Show. Um, I mean, it's a great honor and privilege for myself to have an expert like you also wanting to share your own experience with a global audience and on the Pest Experience Show. Thank you very much. And I'm sure people who are also listening to us are also appreciating you for your time be part of the show. My name is Shofu Babalola, for those who don't know who exactly I am, right? So let's get started on the Pest Experience Show tonight. Mr. Ryan, thank you very much for joining. We've been having some
Yeah,
chit chat before we started the the show. So, I mean,
yeah,
so no, Mr. Ryan, you have about 2 decades, years of experience in pest management and specifically commercial pest management. What exactly drew your attention into creating that niche? Usually in business, they say don't niche down. But like
yeah.
I'm seeing an expert spending 2 decades. That's a lot. That's 20 years, over 20 years in just focusing on one particular niche in pest management. What exactly drew your attention to that focus point?
That's a great question. Shofu, thank you for having me on the show, first and
My
foremost.
greatest pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Um, yeah, so it wasn't always commercial. When I first started, I was, running a residential route and,
Hmm.
doing houses and whatnot. And, I started as a technician. Um, I think what brought me towards commercial, the residential um, it had less challenge for me, right? After you'd solved a number of rodent situations or pest
Hmm.
situations, I was, in my route in Napa, California, I'd be driving by these giant wineries, just massive structures, right? And I think that's what drew me to it was just like, wow, what does pest management look like there, right? Or a
Mm.
museum, like what does a pest management guy do in a museum? Um,
Mm.
right. So, and then food facilities, not restaurants. I'm talking like producers, manufacturers, things like that. Like some of these wineries and food processing facilities are just massive. And it just the challenge of that and the learning curve for me was what drew me to it.
Wow. So basically, I mean, pest control itself is challenging, right?
Sure.
But I mean, I agree with the fact that commercial facilities are much more challenging because
Hmm.
you tend to see challenges firsthand, and you're
Hmm.
going to be looking at it and say, okay, you know what? How exactly can we solve this rodent problem? Whereas you must have probably tried
Hmm.
several products and discover that they are getting resistance to this particular one. You change it, but in residential apartments, you can use a particular brand of insecticides or rodenticide for 50 clients without changing or rotating your beat because you're
Yeah.
not doing anything different. It's just something, and then that's a great one. Nobody has ever thought about. I'm not sure myself. I've never thought about it. Like, okay, commercial facilities are way challenging. And
Yeah.
and that's really great. So you see, most pest control products just focus on residential work. But even
Yeah.
in terms of cash, in terms of money, commercial jobs actually pays. It pays a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
true. So you work with most of these audited and certified facilities.
Hmm.
Those two things, audited, certified.
Yeah.
What makes the difference? Is there a difference between an audited facility and a certified facility? So a building can be certified and not
Yeah.
audited, or it can be audited and then be certified. So let's what's the difference? So for those who are just hearing it for
Well,
the first time.
yeah, I mean, I think depending on what scheme you're going for, whether it's BRC or AIB or SQF, any of those, ISO, um, those parameters are there and you're going to get certified. Your customer's going to be certified in that, right? And the audit is going to be aligning you with the certification, making sure that you're within your parameters, right? Are you doing all of the things? Do you have all the documentation in place,
Mm-hmm.
the programs in place, your critical control points, or your risk assessments, all of that stuff is part of your certification. So your audit is aligning you with that, right? And making sure that you're not missing something somewhere.
Wow. So a certified facility needs to actually be audited properly,
You're not
right?
going to get certified unless you audit and understand that you meet the certification, right? You have to meet the certification. It's kind of
True.
like here you get your driver's license. Well, you have to go actually drive with the instructor to make sure that you know how to drive, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
So in terms of audit, what are the major things I mean, I know that for commercial facilities or like for example food facilities, there is so much that has to do with audit. You have to look at the HSC, you have to look at food hygiene, you have to look at sanitation and all those kind of things. But focusing more on pest management in
Mhm.
commercial facilities, what are the key things that pest control operators or the commercial facilities get audited for?
Sure. Well, a lot of these schemes like AIB and SQF and those, the pest control section is very small in this book, right? So your food
Mm-hmm.
facility knows more about what they need to do in their audit than the pest controller probably will. But when it comes to the pest control section, it's a risk base, risk driven. It's the IPM design that make sure that you're documenting things properly, right? Where did it happen? When did it happen? What did you do?
Mm,
What is the follow-up? When is the follow-up? How long is the follow-up? Did it work? Making sure you have your safety data sheets and all of that stuff. That's all part of it, right? Your insurance, your licensing, making sure all of those things are in place. But as far as the pest control section, it's really um, identifying inspections, documentation, not just spraying, not just route work, routine work, right? It's not about just checking stations, right?
mm,
A lot of companies just come in and check devices, right? That technician, I've got 500 devices to check, and so he goes and checks all 500. That's what I do every time I'm here. And that's not what these things are
mm.
about, right? I mean, you
So,
have to do that. You have to check the stations, of course, but you have to
yeah.
you have to lead the service, right? Like that, you can't just do the same thing every time you're there.
Wow. So it's more of a more detailed work. It has to do with
Mhm.
also communicating with the client. So speaking about communication,
Yeah,
you initially when we before we started the show, before we went live, you talked about the fact that you are an independent pest control consultant, basically focusing on helping pest control companies to relate better with the client. And that's like a different aspect of pest management I've never heard before. So,
yeah,
which is actually as a pest control person, you're in the gap between the pest control company and also the clients. Like in a very competitive world where people are just, this guy can actually steal my client. So, and he knows more than me. So, I hope the clients will not tell him to do the service, something like that. So,
yeah,
you mentioned something about communicating. Sometimes most of the companies don't know how to communicate with the clients. So, like I would like to I'm sure most people also want to know like a practical or a case study where you've addressed a particular situation and the technicians was not doing so much well in terms of communication or something like that. Just an example, practical example on that.
yeah, yeah. No, happy to do that. I mean, I think for me, for my company, I'm not doing route work. So when I step into a facility, it's really to help the customer realize the results that they're looking for, right? Sometimes they don't know what the results are that they're looking for. They just don't want bugs,
Mm,
right? They don't
true.
really know what that means and
Exactly.
what is their part in that, right? And then the pest control company, if they're willing to listen and take some feedback and work together, I will help them out as well to keep their client happy and to tell them what it is, where the gap is, right? But yes, it's like a case study. I had one facility where the global pest control company was doing the service. They were dealing with roof rats. Technician was setting traps on the ground not in the ceiling where the roof rats were, right? The customer just
Oh,
was having problems, didn't realize that it was being misidentified or mishandled, right? The technician
mm-hmm.
is burnt out. The technician's burnt out because he's been documenting sanitation, right? The sanitation was horrible.
Exclusion.
And no, it wasn't even like he was calling out pipe collars under the sink, right? Well,
Wow.
these rodents are getting in from the exterior footprint, right? We know that.
Yeah.
So we got to
Yeah.
start there, right? But so anyway, the technician is frustrated over it. They'll never do what I ask them to do. I've documented it for a year. Right? It's never going to get done. And so they just go on auto mode, right? They just continue to set a million traps, check, whatever.
Wow.
They're not really solving the problem. Well, so then I get involved and I find out, okay, well, so we definitely have a sanitation issue. Everybody's burnt
Mm.
out. The technicians burnt out. The facility people, staff are burnt out from being blamed for all the problem. Is it their fault? Is it the pest control fault? Maybe it's a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of both, right? So then what I do is I back up from the acute problem, right? Identify
Yeah.
what is the problem, and then I work with the stakeholders, like the people that have monetary involvement, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
technician's not going to be communicating with those people. Maybe the
Wow.
salesperson that sold it talks to some of those people, but my
Mm.
goal is to get to the very top, to where
Wow.
we're all communicating and we all understand. Once the customer understands their involvement and how it affects all, down
Mm-hmm.
to the technician, then we all start working together, and that's how we get to solve the issue, is when we get all the players involved together, because the technician can't solve it on his own. Like that's
Wow.
not when it's in that situation. Yeah.
So I'm really curious about this. So for example, um, let's say a particular commercial let's say a restaurant
Mhm.
is really having bad issues with rodents and the pest control company is not functioning well. Then who contacts you? Is it the pest control company or the restaurants contacts you?
It's usually not a restaurant, as we discussed a little bit. Restaurants
Yeah.
are a little bit difficult, in the respect that there's not a lot of money to be paying pest control to be a thought based. It's hire pest
Mm-hmm.
control because I have to have it. I need somebody to come spray my roaches or deal with my rats. They don't want
Yeah.
to. They don't necessarily want to get that involved. There's very few that I've ever had say, Warren, we really want to get to the bottom of this, right? They'll more than likely fire the pest company, hire another pest company, hoping for a different
Yeah.
result. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I would be contacted by the customer. The customer would be fed up because they have hired 4 or 5 different pest control facility or pest control providers, and they're getting the same result. So when I come in, I
Mm.
do an assessment. I figure out what is going on, what the species is, uh, you know, what that life cycle is, what are the environmental factors, what's the structural factors, and then who's in the game or who's not in the game, right? That needs to be that facility
Mm.
manager or that that manager of the restaurant may not care that, I mean,
True.
unless he's going to get shut down, then he cares. And then why didn't you solve it? Right. So now I got to hire another
Mm.
pest control company because you didn't solve it. But yet he didn't take any
Mm.
recommendations seriously and deal with it. Right. So
True.
sometimes it's the owners, right, that have monetary stake in the game, right? They're getting shut
Mm.
down, they're losing thousands of dollars a day. This has happened multiple times. We keep hiring different pest control companies. We're getting the same results. So that's when I get called in and figure out, like, how do we have a long-term solution that will outlast turnover, management, technicians, all of that. Like, how do we have a long-term preventative, proactive
Wow.
solution? Yeah.
Wow. I feel like that's so for example, now in a facility where the maintenance person is not doing his own responsibility, or there is so much damage in that particular commercial facility. So you hold the maintenance person responsible. So at that point,
Mm.
the customer is the one at fault, right? So as a consultant now, basically just audit and give a report, then make recommendations, then also call the pest control company to make this few stuffs, and you get paid. I feel like is that how it
It's
works?
Yeah, so here's the problem, right? It's not the facility guy's fault. You can't hold them
Mm.
accountable, right? Here's the difference in mind shift, okay? So it's all about mind shift. It's about education.
Mm.
That facility guy or gal may have a set understanding. Well, we'll always have bugs. We're always going to have mice, right? They're not necessarily educated to know. Not all of them. A lot of them are. Um, but they're not understanding that they're myths of this pest. They assume that this is always going to be a thing,
Yeah.
and they're busy. They don't have time to like go do pest study like I do or like you do,
Mm-hmm.
right? We spend our lives doing this to protect the
Exactly.
health and the environment of people and all that. But um, you know, that facility manager is not necessarily at fault. They just probably don't understand what it's going to take or what their part in that is. It's a mindset. So if you can talk with the people and educate them in a way that brings them together, brings them with you, brings them in and get
Mm-hmm.
them to see why this matters, that's when you start seeing the program shift, right? And then
Mm.
the technician's pretty happy because they're seeing sanitation improve, doors are being closed. So,
Yeah.
they actually have a chance to do what they said they were going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget the sales portion of this. When the salesperson comes and
Mm.
sells the service, they promise all the bells and whistles. You're never going to have any bugs. We're going to be there. We're the best company. We're this and that.
Yeah.
And the facility manager goes, "Oh, great, perfect. I don't have to worry about it." Well, that's not the case. The facility manager needs to understand that
Mm.
process and why it's important and, kind of get rid of the myths. of,
Wow.
yeah.
That's true. So I feel like most of these facility managers, what do you think about training facility managers to understand at least
Yeah.
a little bit of pest management? Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they need to know those things. They need to know more about exclusion. They need to know
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
spot entry points so that they can raise alarm, reporting
Yeah.
style or reporting method,
Yeah.
what they
Yeah.
can do, first hand solutions. So what do you think about that? Then also, what are the common pest control mistakes that causes facilities to fail during audit
Sure.
period?
Yeah. So your first question, absolutely, training is part of what I do. So I train custodial staff. I train the facility managers. I train the directors. Um, all of those people start to learn. It's funny because it's really three things. Is right. It's food, water, and harborage.
Mm-hmm.
To make it
Exactly.
simple, that's what we're training on. But it gets, if when they see what they're looking for, like I'll do a training with the roofing contractors so they know what to look for as far as grease marks, sebum, gaps, openings, things they should pay attention to. The custodial staff, things that they should be looking for, like clutter, overflowing dumpsters, water, leaky pipes, things like that, right? So we're training those people to understand pest control through our eyes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so the combination of training all of those people, all of the stakeholders, which I mentioned earlier, training all of
Yeah.
them to understand those things, then enhances the ability for the pest control company that's on site, right? So, and that's what I'm saying when I'm bridging the gap between the two, because pest control is not necessarily doing something wrong, but they're certainly not able to like get it to the whole organization to where everybody's on the same page. And then to
True.
the second question, most common mistakes that I see in an audit facility is documentation. Um,
Mm,
you don't, you know, I found a mouse in the tin cat, right? In the mouse device, right? The mouse station. And on that note, it just says replace glue board, replace bait, found mouse, whatever, right? It doesn't say inspected, to find out where they're getting in, did an inspection of the facility to find out what the population is, right? Set additional traps. You know,
mm,
what did you do when you found that? What are the next
mm,
steps? What can I expect? Did you set up a temporary map of where you put the additional devices with a date that you set them and a date that you plan to pull them? Right? So it's
mm,
it's more than just setting more devices. It's more than just saying you found a pest. It's that so in short, that's some of the things that I find in audited facilities, not having a map where all the devices are at.
mm,
They're not numbered, they're not on a map. I can't tell what station you're talking about when I'm looking through the records. Not having the proper trending. A lot of
mm,
companies have trending and they say, well, station 9 every March, gets, hit with mice. Okay, well, fine. Is the technician using that data to then next year or whatever, we'll say insects, there's an insect problem that comes every year, right? Seasonal thing. Are they using that trending to then be proactive come around the next time the summer hits or the winter hits or things like that,
mm.
right? So it's one thing to have all the bells and whistles and have all your stuff in place, but if you're not documenting it, it didn't happen. If you're not trending it, then you're not being proactive in understanding where this needs to go to protect the customer, right? We get into predictive pest management, right? The weather,
Yeah.
doors are open at certain times. All of those things are very important in an IPM program for an audited facility. So those are some of the gaps that I see of failures that happen.
I totally agree with the fact that improper documentation is a job not done well.
Mm,
And so we need to also, when we say documentation is so wild that we need to first look at how do we document? Is there like a current, for example, you talked about tracing the data backwards.
mhm.
All right. So for the next 1 year and say, oh, we installed the base station and bait section 1006 at this particular facility, the baits inside that particular bait stations were fed more than the other baits in other bait stations. So how do we keep this data properly in such a way that when we look at it, data ends, we can actually do a data analysis and see that predict what type of pest is actually invading this particular facility or infesting this particular facility. What do you recommend in terms of getting that documentations done? That's one. Then two is that is there a list of documentation type, maybe checklist, pests, bait stations checklist? Is there a list that you probably have or templates that you have that you even want to share if you don't mind, if you like to share them also?
Um, I may need help on the first question or remembering what the first question was. I'll start with the second question. So the software that you use, I don't know what it's like in other countries, what's available, but
Mm-hmm.
for me, I'm using the Bell Labs IQ sensing, which tells me what time the event happened, when the rodent went in the
Mm-hmm.
station. Um, what day, what time, all of those things, right? How many captures? I can see that over time, and I can
Okay.
understand the pressures. Before that kind of technology came along, I had say you've got 20 interior devices and 20 exterior devices, right? Just to make it easy. I put
Wow.
that on an Excel list, device number, all of that, and we would track, 3 spiders, 1 mouse, 4 roaches, whatever, right? And I'd put that on an Excel spreadsheet, and then I would turn it into a pivot table, and then that would tell me the amount of pests, what week, what month, all of those things. And so if you have the technology, it saves a lot of time. Don't do it the way that I just said. So if you have the technology
Yeah.
over there, your technology should be able to document what months are most active, what weeks are what pests are most active, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and that's important. It's not so much. It's important to track all the data, but the question is why?
Yeah.
Why does station 9 always get hit at this time?
True.
What is happening? What is happening at that time? Maybe shipments are coming in at that
Mm-hmm.
section at that time. Maybe I had a chocolate facility, the field would grow across, two 500 feet from the facility at least, but they had an open field, right? And every year they mow that field. Well, every year we get a ton of mice that come right to the bay docks. And so what do? We set up additional devices there because we know every year this is going to happen at this time is when these fields get cut. So it's great to trend, it's great to have the data, but then why? What are you doing now that you have the information, right? And excuse me if I missed your first question. Maybe I answered it, maybe I didn't.
So thank you. So I mean, the first question was actually on documentations, which is basically if
Oh,
it
what
was like
documentation?
yeah, what documentations should
Yeah.
pest control company have firsthand?
Yeah. So for an audited facility, you got to have your IPM program. You got to have your risk assessment in place. Um, you've got to have all of your safety data sheets for the materials that you're using, right? Your approved material list that you've discussed with the facility. Like what do they allow to be used and not used on the facility? Um, all of those things are important part of that documentation, right? Your insurance, and in different parts of the world, I don't know what those requirements are, but like for us, we have a lot of things that have to be in place documentation wise, and then so
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the logbook or the program, right? So you have your documentation for all that. Then we have the documentation by the technician, the servicing professional, right? What are they documenting? How are they leading the program, right? So you have to tell a story through what you're writing down when you do your site visit, right? I have to understand what you're seeing through your words. Now, the hard
Okay.
part with that is not everybody reads the book, right? So if you're writing
Yeah.
a book of notes, that facility manager is not necessarily sitting down there reading all of your notes. And
Mm.
so there's the gap, right? So you got to get back to training and educating the facility staff and people to understand your documentation has to be legible and understandable, and you have to be leading the service, and then they have to be actually reading it and implementing. So this way we have that full circle. I make a recommendation, they see it, they make a they make a change. I come back, I validate that yes, this change has been made, and then we close that loop, right? And that's how that
Mm-hmm.
whole process works if we're having a good audited facility service. If there's a break in that anywhere, then you're not going to necessarily pass audit, or you're going to have pressures and problems that you wouldn't normally have because nobody's paying attention to it.
Wow. So it shows that there is a need for that proper collaboration between the pest control company and the facility managers or the representative
Mhm.
of the organization so that we can have a very good growth. And you said something that people don't read. So if they
Right.
don't read, what is the alternative to that? I mean, I have a similar case where I had to actually even go to all the facility branches and make videos of these
Yeah.
things before they started taking action into it. Is it the same thing that happens there? And if that's not, if people don't read, what exactly do we do? Because if you continue to train, I mean, yeah, training is important. Training is critical. It's an important aspect. But even with the training, you still give them documents to read eventually. So they still don't read. So
Yeah.
what's the best route in making sure that people do the necessary things effectively?
Yeah. I mean, it's about consolidating what your importance, right? So instead
Mm,
of writing a book when you're there, right? Because you're going to see a ton of things and you're going to want to write a whole bunch of stuff, doors are open, water, standing water, pest pressure here, pest pressure, all of that kind of stuff. You could write a bunch. I had a technician that worked for me that would write a book, basically. I mean, just a ton of stuff. And I loved it because his thought process was great. But again, the facility
mm,
manager wasn't going to read that. So you've got to pick your most important things that are detrimental to getting movement forward. And then you got to kind of put things on a list and work through them. So instead of overwhelming the facility person with 100 things, you pick your five most important topics or important, corrective actions, and you start working with them so where they understand it, keeping in mind that everybody learns differently. Some people are learn through video. Some people learn
mm-hmm.
through, hey, come show me what you're talking about. And some people will read it and they'll understand it and all that. So if I'm not getting buy-in on my written documentation, they're not reading it, I will walk with the facility person. I will show them what I'm talking about, and I will explain it in a way that they understand how important that is to the results that they want, right? They hired
Mm,
me. They hired you. I'm talking if I was a pest controller person doing the actual service now. You hired
yeah,
me to do a service because you didn't want these pests and because you want to pass your audits. Okay. These are the things I'm seeing. And so if I show you what I'm seeing and what that means, right? That, the female roach has to have moisture to lay her eggs, right? So the more
yeah.
moisture you have here on the floor is the more carrying capacity your facility has for the German roach, right? So like
Wow.
if they understand that what they're doing is direct relation to the problem that they're having, then we get some movement forward. We get some buy-in. It's different than just
True.
reading it on paper. So I would say to the pest controllers, like spend time figuring out your customers' learning,
Mm-hmm.
the way that they pay attention, they learn because they're busy. They've got a million other things to do besides pest control, right? And so they hired
True.
you, just solve my problem. I don't want to have a problem. I hired you to solve my problem. But they need to understand their part in that. So like you got to figure out how to communicate with your customer.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So we have some people who are actually watching us directly on YouTube as we speak.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Area Demola Oyewole says, well done, SB. Thank you very much. So if you have questions, please drop them in the comment section. The live chat on YouTube, I can read them out. Just also let me know where you are joining directly from. Just drop it on the line. Or you can send a message directly to me on WhatsApp 07084421068. And if you want to also call in, yeah, you can call in on the line. I could take the call and just answer your few questions. Then we can set the tone. Thank you very much. You've talked so much on and explained vividly on collaboration and proper education, also understanding the point of view of the client and see how exactly can you communicate with those people properly. The effectiveness of your job is determinant on how well you communicate to the client in solving the pest problem. And that's critical in solving pest problem in anywhere. I'm sure in your years of consulting over 20 years, there are experiences and experiences shaping how you operate. We agree. or that the experiences shaping how you operate, how you communicate. Has there been any, probably one of the most challenging pest situations that you've ever encountered in a certified facility?
Uh, Gosh, I don't have anything offhand. I mean,
Yeah.
the I mean, all the normal things, right? Sanitation, keeping the
Mm-hmm.
doors closed. That's all very common stuff. I
So you've
think.
not like experienced like a very hard to reach clients that okay, even with your recommendations, they are not following their recommendation. Have you ever had that
Well, sure.
experience?
Yeah. I mean, and so then that point, you don't stop trying. You keep trying. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like we were talking about earlier, if they don't close their doors and you're documenting that you're getting bugs in, or rodents in or something of that nature, um, what I ask is then, as a pest control person, what are you doing differently because of the environment that you're working in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we know uh, they always leave that door open, do we have additional devices in place to help
Mm,
protect? If they've always got that door open and they're letting flying insects in, do we have additional capturing devices for the flying insects? Are
mm,
we doing certain types of treatments, right? Are we using microencapsulated versus repellent or bait?
mm-hmm.
Those types of things, like understanding the mode of action of the materials you're using, why you're using the materials. Are you adding additional defenses in place? Um, that way, nobody can come back to the pest control and say, well, you're not doing your job, right?
Mm, mm,
And a lot of times the gaps that I see is the pest control uh, gets overwhelmed and or defensive. Well, I always tell you to keep your doors closed. You don't keep your doors closed, or you don't
mm,
keep the sanitation up, and you're not cleaning your facility. Well, what can I do, right? Sanitation wise, if I know I've got a wet facility and I know I've got like drain issues and stuff like that, well, maybe I'm using some bio cleaners in those drains as part of my pest control versus waiting for the adult population to develop. Maybe I'm dealing with the the breeding cycles. Maybe I'm putting in
mm-hmm.
some IGR, some insect growth regulator. Um, I I'm adapting to what I'm seeing on a regular basis. So if I can't affect change by communicating, doesn't mean I stop understanding the pests that I'm dealing with and then going after it as a source,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get from underneath it, right? Or behind it versus, trying to change it through documentation or,
Wow.
their work, right?
So
So you have
I want
to,
to,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
okay.
Sorry.
So I want to give an example that, for example, there's a particular facility that you've audited. Okay, so there are questions coming in already. Damn. Okay, so let me ask this first before I take the
Go
question.
easy
So,
on me. Go easy on me.
okay, so let's say there's a facility where you've audited, also given as I mean, let me say assessment because audited means something different entirely. So you've given a proper assessment of the facility, and then you send them the report, and even at that time you still have the pest control company who is servicing them, but they've not done the aspect of closing up the obvious gaps, like
Hmm.
the clear, even
Hmm.
to the gatesmen actually even know that these rodents are dying when the pest control company is coming, but fresh ones are coming in after 7 days or after 10
Hmm.
days. Then you have new
Hmm.
fresh ones coming in. And everybody knows the hose. And the hose has been there for like years. Nobody's talking,
Yeah,
nobody's working on it. Also, all they do every time is change the vendor.
right.
So, and as a professional who actually understand much more better, and you document, you give them these informations, but they're not doing these things. So, what do you do as a consultant in that kind of situation, or what do you recommend the pest control company should do in that kind of situation?
Yeah, that's a hard one. So for me, here in the States, I often see a rodent station next to a hole, this big.
Hmm.
They set the box right next to it with bait, with
So,
poison in it.
so you
Why
get
don't you
into the
just
business.
why don't you just seal the hole?
Exactly.
Right? So
Hmm.
as a pest control technician, I'm going to seal the hole. Well, oh, well, they need to pay for this, or um, there's too much exclusion for me to do all the exclusion. But it's a process of elimination. If you know it's an active entry point and you can seal it there while you're there, that's pest control, not filling a
Hmm.
bait box, right? And so it's not a who's doing what and who's not doing. Your goal as a pest control person is to solve their problem. And if
Hmm.
you've documented exclusion work and they're not doing it, if it's within your means, you should do it and just get it done so you don't have that problem, right? So you don't have the return calls. If it's
Hmm.
something major and you got to get on ladders and you're rappelling off the side of the building to get some spot or something. I'm not saying do that, but like the basic repairs, if you got to add a door sweep or you've got to seal up a 4-inch hole or a small half-inch gap around a pipe, just seal it up and
Hmm.
do it as part of your regular when you're there. Take one or two.
Hmm.
Take one or two, and eventually you're going to get through most of the exclusion. The problem is a lot of companies don't take a step back and even do the full inspection of the exterior, right? That's like
Hmm.
an add-on or we sold you on a pest control program, but if you want us to do an inspection, it's going to cost you extra. But
Hmm.
why'd they hire you? They hired you
Why
to
you
not
do?
have the rodents, right? So
True.
that should be part of your solution is sealing it up.
Hmm.
So um,
Hmm.
within means. You don't want to spend, thousands of dollars doing exclusion work for your client that they're not going to pay for. But
Hmm.
think about how much money you're spending on return calls. If it's some basic sealing up of stuff, why don't you just take care of it and be done with it so you don't have to keep coming back?
Hmm.
And
That's
that's my perspective. I don't
that's
know.
that's that's a perfect perspective because um to be honest, because if you look at the cost of callbacks and look at the
Hmm.
cost of sealing it up even before they start the service, it solves the entire problem. And that's very true. That's very,
Well,
very
and then if
true.
you lose the account because that problem's
Ex
been going on and on and on, right?
exactly.
Then what?
But
Yeah.
I mean, we have some. Well, you said something about having like major major points of entry that probably one cannot even solve. Then in that kind of situation, let's say for example, like the electrical socket, um, there's a maybe they need to actually there's so many holes on the floor, right? The
Ooh,
dustbin area, something like that. They need to probably raise up the floor a little bit. I think those things are major projects and the
ooh,
company is not actually even doing the work. So
ooh.
I mean, there's some this the point now is in two ways. You have some clients who are actually very collaborative. There are some that they don't even want to know anything. They just want
Right.
the best out, especially when it comes to restaurants, like you said,
Yeah.
or if some hotels actually do that. They don't want to hear bed bugs in any of their rooms. And you just feel like, oh, it's a magic thing to not just have these bed bugs and all of stuff like that. So speaking about bed bugs, wildlife show, somebody said something, said, well done, SB. Please, what are the key methods of preventing and terminating bed bugs? I feel like that's a um very long topic to talk about.
We could get involved.
Because
Yeah. Yeah. That's
oh,
a
okay.
lot.
So that's really a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, Mr. Ryan, would you want to just pinpoint on this? Because what we're talking about is a little bit out of bedbug control, but
Yeah.
maybe you want to just say something on that,
Well,
or we just
that's an educational thing. So
yeah.
educating your clients on one, the ramifications of having a bed bug infestation, what's it going to cost them? How long are they going to have the room out of commission? All of that. But the harder education is to get them to understand that they need a proactive
Mm-hmm.
involved, right? So proactive for canine, right? So, I always push for canine inspections, right? Quarterly, annually, whatever, to where the we know what the property holds, as far as how many rooms, how many, where, what floor, all of those types of things, right? So it paints the picture. We get a map of that facility, and we know what we're dealing with. And then having proactive things in place that, proactive treatments, crack and crevice, to where if a bed bug does get dropped off, it doesn't have a place to live. Exclusion, to where they can't harbor. Monitoring. Um, you know, had they done the proper proactive, the customer and the pest control together, you probably wouldn't have the bed bug problem, right? They're imported, right? So we know they're going to get dropped off, but is there going to be an infestation, or is it
Mm-hmm.
just a dropped off bed bug, right? That's where you want to be, is like, well, there's nothing living here. We know that by the canine inspections, and we know that by all the proactive stuff that we do, that there's no infestation. So now we just have something that's been dropped off by the tenant, or the um,
Wow. So,
stuff like
so
that. So yeah,
amazing. So someone would probably be asking canine inspection, what's canine all about? Well, I had a program with Mrs. Kimberly
Kim,
Camera.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
she's
So
amazing.
she,
She's amazing, right?
yeah, easy pause. And we spoke extensively about canine. So if you don't know what canine is all about, I mean, just go and watch the interview with Mrs. Kimberly
Mm,
Camera right
yeah.
on Insight Radio YouTube
Highly,
channel.
highly recommend that. Yeah. Yeah. She's something. That's for sure.
Amazing. So, most companies would want to, for myself, right? Let me just speak for myself first. I so much love, or I've been doing, I started the pest control industry with residential account. And most companies actually do the same, where we just so much focus on residential, forgetting commercial clients. Or let me say commercial clients are actually very competitive. So for those who are looking to move into commercial facilities, what are the skills or systems that they should develop first? Is it sales? Is it proper documentation? Is it understanding pest problem exactly? I mean, I know commercial is a little bit different in terms of the challenges that you experience on the field. It causes you to research a whole lot, so much. So what are the things that you would recommend for a pest control company who is aspiring to perspire to retire from residential, but to acquire
Mm,
commercial? I love that. To acquire commercial facilities. So what are the skills that you
yeah.
comment?
As far as for pest control companies that want to do more commercial, um, the hard part is, you have these global companies that have all the bells and whistles, right? They've got the portal and the technology and the trending, and everything's, easy to sign in and see their documentation. It's all very clear and precise. Um, that's first and foremost. If you want to compete in that realm, you have to build up your bells and whistles to where you can even be in the
Mm,
same room, right? The foundation of pest control and understanding the biology of your pest that you're dealing with, the mode of action that you're dealing with the materials you're using, excuse me, all
yeah.
of those things are just as important residentially or commercially, right? You need to know what you're talking about, need to know your pests and your materials that are available. But yeah, I would say if you want to do more commercial work, you need to be able to um, show up like the globals as best you can,
Mm,
right? So have all the bells and whistles, which costs you some money to have to be able to present yourself that way. Um, it's a different mindset, right? So depending on what kind of commercial, right? I mean, That's why it's hard to answer that question, because if you're dealing with a restaurant, it's going to be different than dealing with a museum. If you're
Mm,
dealing with a museum, it's going to be different than dealing with food processing. If you're dealing with a resort, right? That's a whole different thing. The answer is yes. We'll take care of it. Yes, yes, right? Like, at a resort,
exactly.
there is no, whatever, right? And if you're dealing with audited, it's documentation and
Yeah.
trending, right? And if you're dealing with a museum, you're dealing with like artifacts and art and things that if they go missing or get damaged by pests, um,
Mm,
that's a huge thing. So I think
yeah.
commercially you have to train for each of those scenarios to where when you show up to a facility, you understand what you're getting into. Like a food processing facility, if their GMP requires that you wearing a vest and a hard hat and closed-toed shoes, you need to
Mm-hmm.
understand that. Some facilities don't, right? So understanding what facility you're getting into and what requirements, that's where you start to expand as a commercial technician and as a commercial company, is when you understand what's involved in each entity, each type of
Wow.
commercial, right? So it's segmented, right? So you could pick, hey, we only want to do food processing, right? So then you're going to study food processing facilities, their GMPs, their different audit certifications, AIB, SQF, ISO, whatever their types of things, and you're going to be able to speak to those things, right?
Wow.
And so you pick those things. Luckily for me, I've had the opportunity with the pest control company that I grew up with basically over the last 19 years or so. I've had the opportunity to see many different commercial type accounts. And so that's, from lead certified to schools, Healthy Schools Act, what it
Mm-hmm.
means to deal with children in schools and their stuff. Um, all of those things have played a part in I know a lot about I know a little about a lot of things. I don't know everything about everything. So pick the things that are interesting and then like learn about them and then focus and then have all the bells and whistles to back your data up and your offering to the client, right?
Amazing, amazing. I feel like that's critical. Proper education. First, pick niche by niche, then build yourself on that, then you can actually grow. I wanted to ask that what would be your advice to pest control professionals who want to elevate? You were talking about, and I wrote it in my jotter here. Like initially when I started the show, I said, for every of my audience, the global audience who are listening to the Pest Experience Show, please have a jotter, right? I have a jotter myself for Pest Experience Show where I jot things that I learn from every of the guests that comes on. I
Mm,
even have a jotter reach out to me. I have Pest Inside jotter to give out, right? So I document these things. I learn every Sunday. And for me, it's not funny enough, it's funny how I do this with so much joy. Having to have people on the Pest Experience, they share their experiences. And I also learn. I'm asking questions that probably based on the experience I had during the week or my own also experience, and have people to also share their own experiences. We're learning. I'm learning. I'm unlearning. I'm relearning. I'm also people are also learning on the platform. So it builds up so many opportunities that, and I feel like, I mean, we have supposed to have about 60K, people who are going to be willing to spend their time here and just unlearn, relearn. It's free, right? So what would you talked about having show up like the globals, right? That was in your word. Let the pest control companies show up like the globals. So we just have 2 minutes left before we end the show tonight. How exactly do you think most of these companies can actually show? Because anybody who listen to that would want to say, how can I do it? What can I do?
sure.
So where can I get this kind of opportunity? So how can this show up as a world class, I mean, that practice, the world class standard
Yeah,
that is
sure.
expected?
Well, in short, I would move from paper documentation to digital documentation. I would make it
Mm-hmm.
easy for the client to be able to log in, see the pesticides used, see the notes from the service, see the trends of the devices, be able to see their map of the facility, where their devices are located, how often, when are they being checked, all of those types of things, what's being found. They need to have that at their fingertips. And
Hmm.
if you have a software or a way to do that, that's going to be your key, right? To being able to show up and be able to present your findings, your technicians' findings, right? So if you have 20 technicians or 200 technicians, you can't be at every facility. So it's got to
Mm-hmm.
be very streamlined in one location where the customer can just go in, log in, see all of their stuff in real time, of what technicians are finding at their facility and what they're doing about it. So
Wow.
that's how you're going to show up best for your commercial client.
Amazing. Amazing. That's a very important aspect in pest management, which emphasizing on where we started from the pest experience show tonight, which is basically documentation, commercial facilities. To sustain a commercial facility is documentation. To be able
Mm,
to retain even residential clients is documentation. And
mm,
documentation, what you document is a job well done. So it's
mm,
quite important that pest control companies, residential, maybe you're serving residential, maybe you're serving commercial facilities, always have that proper documentations and informations right on check. I mean, it's been a wonderful one sharing your experience to the global audience and participants of the Pest Experience Show. And I'm super excited to have you, Mr. Ryan, right on the Pest Experience Show tonight. It strengthens the collaboration we look forward to and we're also experiencing right now in international standards and seeing how exactly can we do it much more better. What are the
mm.
things that we're doing wrong? How is the African market? How is the international market looking at the solving pest problems? And together we can create the awareness.
Yeah.
We also laid emphasis on educating people, and that's exactly what we're doing with the Pest Experience Show. What we're also doing with Pest Insights Initiative, which is basically creating that awareness and creating that opportunity for the global world. And people want to ask, what exactly is Pest Insights all about? Pest Insights is basically an we basically focus on empowering communities through pest control education. And what we do basically is right now, we have an upcoming project, which is the Pest Insight Apprenticeship Program, which is creating that next generation of pest control professionals, creating the workforce that is needed in the pest control industry. You have fresh graduates, core members, young minds who are going to be trained real hand on pest management. And we have guests, we have facilitators like Dr. Daniel Baldwin, we have Mrs. Kimberly Camera, Mr. Ryan, who's also going to be teaching, part of the facilitators. We have Mr. Edward Overt, we have Professor Kemabunta, we have Baba Shomoy for Nigerians who are going to be, we know Mr. Michael Shomoy, Elder Michael Shomoy, who is going to also be part of the and host of many other facilitators that we have for the next 3 months. We're going to be training these people. Then after the 3 months, we're going to be taking them down to pest control companies through provider to refer them to pest control companies. And it's going to be a wonderful time creating that next generation. And that's the joy that I have. The joy there is seeing people find potentials with the little things that we do through Pest Insights, through Pest Experience Show, and Insight Radio at large. And it's just a privilege. So we're open to sponsorship, we're open to collaboration, we're open to support. Um, Also, probably want to run adverts on the Pest Experience Show. You will have a product. We talked about digital solutions. We can have a pest control companies that say, okay, I mean, pest software companies that say, okay, I do these things, right? And we have pest control companies who actually need this thing. So, and this is the bridge. The Pest Experience Show is the bridge where you showcase this product and you get to hear, I mean, get to reach the audience who are going to be needing the products, need your services, and stuff like that. So to run advert, please reach out to the phone lines on the description, the description below, or you can call my own number directly, 07084421068. Please remember to add +234 if you're outside the country. Well, For those who are just joining, my name is Shofu Babalola, and you're welcome to the Pest Experience Show. Thank you very much for joining tonight. I'll see you on the next one every Sunday, 7 to 8 p.m. West African time. That's exactly the time where we talk about everything that has to do with pest management. I'll see you next week, Sunday, 7